Mac users will notice that 3D Studio Max won't install under the Mac OS X operating system, and so the solution here is to install Windows 7 on your Mac using a utility known as Boot Camp, and this comes bundled with all recent copies of OS X. So this video is really a short tutorial on how to get started using Boot Camp to partition your hard drive and install Windows 7 on your Mac. You started then with downloading and installing Windows 7. What you'll want to do is you'll want to go to the Microsoft DreamSpark website, and this is part of the academic software alliance that Rasmussen has with Microsoft and allows our students to download their software for free for installation and use in their classes. So what we'll be looking for is Windows 7, and I realize Windows 8 is actually out right now, but for stability reasons, I would actually still recommend that you go ahead and use Windows 7. If you don't see it up on your list as soon as you log in, and I'll be giving you the link in the notes for this video, what you can actually do is go to, you want operating systems on the left hand side here, and then it will appear in your list. So we'll click on Windows 7 and scroll down, and here's the original version, and this guy is the latest Service Pack 1, which has got the updates. And you want to make sure that you download the 64-bit version, as most modern Macs, all modern Macs will be able to run the 64-bit edition, and that's going to allow you to address all of your memory. So go ahead and click Add to Cart, and it might give you a warning about the software being different from the platform you're running on, but that's okay, we know that. So you can click OK, and it's going to ask you to log in. So what you need to do here is go ahead and use your Rasmussen email address and your standard sign-in password and click sign in. Now in my case it's actually giving me a warning message here saying that I've actually already ordered this item before, so I can't re-download it from the shopping cart. But in your case what it's actually going to do is it's going to take you to your shopping cart and show you that the item has been added. And again, mine's empty, but yours will show the item added here. And all you need to do is go ahead and check out and follow the instructions. And again, this is all free, so you should see 00 in the total amount to be paid. So you can check out, follow the instructions, and you can download the ISO file, and that will allow you to get started with the next step. So if, like me, you've already gone ahead and downloaded this in the past and you need to retrieve that ISO file again, all you need to do is go ahead and click on Your Account Orders, and that'll take you to a history of everything that you have previously downloaded through the DreamSpark website. And in my case, I'm interested in Windows 7, so I'll scroll down, Windows 7 Professional with Service Pack 1, and this will allow me to re-download this ISO file. So all I need to do, you can see here, it's all ready to go. I've got my product key, which is ready to use. Be sure to note that when you download this, because you're going to need that when you install. Click on Start Download, and this is a little interesting, but the Academic Alliance DreamSpark website actually uses its own download manager. So if you haven't downloaded the secure download manager before, you'll need to go ahead and download that and save it and run the package. But I've already done that before, so what I'm going to do is simply download the SDX file and click on Open, and it's going to launch in the Secure Download Manager here. And I want the 64-bit edition, so all I need to do is click on Start Download. And once that's done, I'll take you through the next step of how to use the files that have been downloaded and get going with Boot Camp. Once you've finished downloading your file, you'll notice that it says Done, and it also says Launch. So what you can actually do is just click on Launch, but it's not going to launch it in the way that you might expect. It's not actually going to install anything or do anything. What it's going to do is take you to your downloads where the file has been downloaded, and you'll see the Windows 7 folder here. You can just double click into this, and what you're actually given is what's known as an ISO file. And essentially this is just a packaged virtual CD or DVD. So it takes the contents of what would typically exist on a DVD that you might distribute if you bought the software, and it just puts it into a single file, so it's all been compressed, packaged there. So what you need to do is actually get this file burnt to a DVD. You definitely need to do a DVD because, as you can see, it's 3.3 gigs, so it's fairly large. So in order to get this burnt to a disk, there's a couple of ways to do it, but one of the easiest ways is just to double click it, and what it's going to do is actually mount this virtual disk on your operating system. You'll see it pops up here in your list of disks and shows you the contents. And obviously you can't run the setup file because that's a Windows executable and won't work on a Mac. So what we need to do is actually load up the disk utility. So if you go to Applications, go down to Utilities, and select Disk Utility, you'll see that drive, that virtual drive mounted here. So you can see English Windows 7 Professional. So all I need to do is just select this and I'm ready to go. I need to insert a blank DVD disk, and I've done that right now. It's my computer. And wait for that to spin up and click on the burn symbol up here. And it says waiting for disk to be inserted, so it's just speeding up that disk, getting ready to burn. And as soon as it finds it, it says ready to burn. Just click on burn, and it's going to go ahead and do that. And it's going to take a little while, depending on the speed of your DVD burner. So just be patient, wait for that to finish. It'll verify the disk to make sure there weren't any burn errors, and then we're ready to get on with the next step. So once your download's complete, you can actually eject the virtual CD drive that we had mounted before, and you'll see that I've got my completed burnt copy of Windows 7 here. And now we can actually fire up Boot Camp, which is what we're going to use to get started on installing Windows 7. So I'm going to go to Applications, Utilities, and you'll see it straight under here, and it's going to be installed by default on your operating system. So you'll see Boot Camp Assistant. So let's check that to start that up. So before we continue, what exactly is Boot Camp? Well, essentially it's just a bootloader. It can manage multiple operating systems that exist on your machine. So when you actually start the machine up for the first time, when it's been powered off and you start it up, what the boot manager does is it asks you which operating system do you want to boot into, and it just manages the difference of having two conflicting or potentially conflicting operating systems on the same machine. So the assistant here is going to help us to get through that. So we click continue, and it's going to ask you if you want to download the latest support drivers for your operating system, and I would recommend that you go ahead and do that. So leave that selected and click continue, and at this point you're going to have to type in your administrator password, and it's going to begin to download your support software. And this really just includes the latest drivers and any other additional support files that are needed to make sure that your Mac hardware can run underneath a Windows environment. Now, you may or may not receive an error message in downloading the support files. I've had this before sometimes, and other times it's been okay, and it's not too big a deal. You can always fix that once you actually get the software installed. So if that does happen, just say I have my installation disk that came with my Mac, and click continue. So next we have to actually partition up the hard drive so that it can actually contain two separate operating systems. Unfortunately, both these operating systems can't exist on the same partition because they need different partition types in order to operate. So the Mac operating system typically runs on an HFS partition, and Windows runs on an NTFS partition. And by default it's going to set Windows at 20 gigabytes, but to be honest with you, that's probably not going to be enough space even for the minimum number of applications. So even when you've installed Windows, you'll probably find that you only have about 5 gigs left. So I would actually recommend that you resize this partition to, I would say, at a bare minimum 30 gigabytes. Now I'm only going to be using this to use 3D Studio, so I'm only going to need a minimum amount of space, but if you can, I'd say 40, but at a minimum just 30 gigabytes. And once you've done that, you can click on Partition. So at this point you are ready to start your actual installation, and as you can probably tell, I've switched over to an external camera for this recording because it's going to have to restart the machine, and that's going to cancel my screen recording software. So all you have to do is make sure you have your Windows 7 DVD inserted into the machine, and you can click Start Installation. And what it's going to have to do is actually restart your machine and boot up the installation of Windows 7, which is going to happen now. At this point, Boot Camp is actually taking over, and it's managing the Windows install. And you can see Windows is starting to load the setup files. Starting Windows, getting ready to start the installation. And here we are, Windows setup. So you can select your language, your time and currency format. Basically just click on Next and Install Now. There's a couple of things we have to specify during the installation process. Accept the terms and conditions. And what we're going to do is, rather than the upgrade, we're just going to do the custom advanced setup, which really is just installing a new copy of Windows. And we're looking for that partition that we created in the Mac operating system, and here it is right here, Boot Camp. So we simply click on this, and in this case it's looking like I'm going to have to format the drive. So we click on Options and Format. Before you go ahead and format this partition, you want to be absolutely certain that you've selected the partition that we created previously, and you'll know it's the right one because it's going to be labeled as Boot Camp. Be sure not to format any of the other partitions, because then you're going to lose your Mac operating system. So obviously this could be a horrendous mistake if you did that. So it's nothing to be too alarmed about, but just be sure that you've selected the correct partition because it's going to be labeled as Boot Camp. It's going to tell you you're going to lose any data that's on that partition, but of course there's nothing on there because it's a brand new partition. And you can see once that's been formatted, you're ready. You can click on Next, and the installation process is going to continue. At this point it's actually copying across your Windows files to the new partition that you created, and this may take some time. And once it's actually finished copying the files and expanding the archives, you can see it's asking us to restart the machine, so we can either wait or we can go ahead and click on Restart Now. So here we go, you can see Windows is starting up for the first time, and when it gives you that message about booting from the disk, just ignore that and just let it continue doing its thing. And as you can see, we're completing the installation. And we have to restart our machine one more time. Again, you can ignore the messages to boot from the disk because we've finished with our setup now. And at this point the operating system is actually loading off the hard drive. So at this point we're ready to type in our username and essentially just follow the on-screen instructions in order to continue. And this is where you need your product key. Now, if you remember when you downloaded the software from the DreamSpark website, you'll have seen that product key listed in red. So what you'll need to do is refer back to those instructions. And if you have forgotten it, or if you didn't write it down, you can actually log back into DreamSpark and log in as yourself, and it'll be listed under your recent orders, so you can just grab it from there. And it's going to finalize your installation and essentially load up your operating system for the first time. And that's it. You're loaded up in Windows and you are ready to go. Now, once you have your copy of Windows installed, the first thing you're going to want to do is install the Boot Camp drivers so that the Windows operating system knows how to talk to all of your hardware. So the first thing you'll want to do is insert your Mac operating system installation DVD that came with your machine, or if you were able to download the drivers when you did the Boot Camp install, you can go ahead and use those files that were downloaded. But in my case, I'm going to use the DVD that I have inserted, and you can see it's got Welcome to the Boot Camp installer. So we just click on Next, accept the agreement, and essentially just let it install all of the various drivers for your hardware. And once it's finished, you are ready to go. Before I finish though, I'd like to show you how you can actually tell your machine which operating system it is that you actually want to boot up into. So there are several ways to do this, but the first way that I'll show you is actually to select the operating system as soon as you start your machine. So here you can see I'm actually restarting my machine, and when it loads up, I'm going to hear the Apple chime, and as soon as I hear that chime telling me the machine's starting up, I'm going to hold down the Option key. I'm going to keep it held down, and as you can see, the screen goes blank and shows the hard drive partitions that I currently have. And you can see that I've got both my Macintosh and my Windows installations here. So all I need to do is select the various one that I want to load up. In this case, I'm going to load up the OS X operating system, and then click on the little arrow icon, and that's going to load into that operating system. Now, the other method of defining which operating system loads up is more of a permanent one, so you can actually set either Windows or OS X to load up by default. And you do that by going to your system preferences on the Mac side, and you'll see Startup Disk as one of your options under System. So simply select that. You'll see the two different installations you have, and simply select the one you'd like to set as your default startup system and click on Restart. It's as simple as that. On the Windows side, you'll see a similar thing. In the bottom right hand corner of your system tray, you'll see a little Boot Camp symbol, and when you click on that, you can go to the Boot Camp control panel, and again you'll see an option to select your startup disk. And this is useful if you keep booting into Windows and you want to make sure you boot into Mac, the Mac side instead, or vice versa. So that's it. You have used Boot Camp to install Windows 7 on your machine, and you can now boot into whichever operating system you choose. And thanks for watching.